The year is 2005. The game company Sony is currently thriving in the gaming market with their current gen console. The PS2 just sold over 100 million units, which no console up to this point had achieved. Things are heading into the right direction for Sony, and the future is looking bright. But there's one little problem. You see, games on the PS2 look like this.
I can't believe it!
While the envisions of the game directors at the time and the future expectations of the audience looked like this. The PS2 just wasn't cutting it, and so it was time for Sony to prepare their new next-gen console. With the competition already having revealed their new innovative and impressive consoles, it was now time for Sony to impress the minds of their audience. Fortunately, at the upcoming E3, Sony will be able to showcase their new console, the PlayStation 3. The original reveal is overall well received, and the public is excited about the intriguing capabilities and technical features of Sony's next console, with the only complaints being directed towards the new controller's design. I mean, look at that thing. Look at that, it looks absolutely awful. After the initial press conference, Sony acknowledged the criticism and reworked certain aspects, like cutting a few technical features and changing the design of the boomerang. By the end of the year, Microsoft's Xbox 360 already released, which put a lot of pressure onto Sony, as they were still reworking the design of the console. Behind the scenes, there were also a few problems regarding a very big issue: the pricing. Additionally, the public was still lacking a proper release day lineup of games. Now was the time to persuade the public into buying that sweet machine called the PS3. Certainly, it will all work out perfectly, just like last time, and they will all love it. With this information in mind, how about we take a look at what Sony delivered?
Requires huge financial investment, $599 US, but we must take risks to reap the rewards. $599 US. And we're not about cutting corners to rush a product to market.
The stages of the game will also be based on famous battles which actually took place in ancient Japan. So here's this giant enemy crab. A lot of great new features for this game. Features as real-time weapon change and new attack its weak point for massive damage.
It's Ridge Racer. Ridge Racer.
So that sums up our playable section.
PlayStation 3 is powered by Cell. We have invested billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of man-hours. It's a processor with power rivaling that of supercomputers, uniquely designed to support massive data processing required for digital entertainment.
Well, that was not good. Unfortunately, the problems did not stop there, cause this is 2006 we're talking about. Compared to today, the gaming scene was significantly smaller, which made the price seem unacceptably high and caused the console to be very unappealing for most gamers of the mid-2000s. But, nevertheless, the console released in November of 2006. On the release day in Japan, there were countless reports of violent behavior. Turns out that many saw an opportunity to make a quick buck by buying as many consoles as possible on day one and price gouging the rare items on sites such as eBay. This in return gathered negative attention by the press and made the hassle of getting one unjustifiably more difficult. And what about the mighty powerful Cell processor that got praised a bunch at that infamous E3 conference? It was this component that unintentionally caused way more harm than was necessary. Now, I'm by no means a technical expert, but the unusual and very powerful nature of the Cell processor turned out to be very useless, because most developers would have to reprogram their code in order to release their titles on the PS3. This in return caused third-party developers to instead work on titles for the promising and way easier to use Xbox 360 and Nintendo Wii, with absolute classics such as
Ridge Racer!
It was no wonder that the PS3 turned out to be an absolute success, right? Well, by By the year 2009, Sony achieved the impossible by rebranding the entire PS3. They lowered the price and great exclusive games such as Heavy Rain and The Last of Us were released. By the end of its life cycle, the PS3 actually outsold its closer competitor, the Xbox 360, by a few million copies. With all that out of the way, it's now time to discuss the release of the next-gen console. Sony certainly did not want a repeat of what had happened with the PS3. In order to achieve this, they relentlessly worked on keeping the price affordable and feeding the console with action-packed and mind-boggling release titles. One of these games was directed by a legend in the field. Mark Cerny was tasked with developing the most unique and nostalgic jump-and-run of its time. Now, in case you're wondering who Cerny is, here are some of the titles he worked on or was involved with. It was this library of previous successes that must have convinced Sony of Cerny's abilities to create a new franchise for the next generation. In an interview, he stated that the inspiration for this game mainly came from Crash Bandicoot and Katamari Damacy. Interesting. And there's a bit of God of War 2, so the inspirations for this title are rather intriguing. But what about the philosophy of this mysterious game? Apparently, the game is supposed to be designed for both old school and new gamers alike. One of the strengths of the game is the story. Another important aspect is the vast world and its secrets. So far, so good. But now it would be cool to finally know a bit about the game and its characters. Then, in 2013, the official announcement trailer was finally released. What will this new Sony IP bring to the table?
War has come to our peaceful land. A veteran explorer, military might. Yes, Doctor.
I would like to make a small addition to the team. Behold my greatest creation, Knack. Knack is capable of explosive growth. He will be invaluable in the fight against the goblins.
Knack, you're no human. Why do you work for them?
The next step of human evolution begins now.
The world is about to change, and he'll be the one who changed it.
Alright, let's break down what we just saw. From the looks of it, it seems like there's an ongoing war between the goblins and the humans. Knack, this funny little guy here,
what a funny little guy,
is the creation of the professor, this guy here, and is capable of growing by collecting these small pieces. The trailer shows certain scenes where Knack has grown tremendously, so this feature appears to be the main mechanic of the game. I can already see the Katamari inspiration. There are also two crucial plot elements that are being hinted at. First up, the goblins appear to be trying to persuade Knack into fighting for them, as he's not a human himself, so Knack's background could be an important aspect of the game's story. The other part is that this purple guy, who at first seems to be nice, has a sinister motive and wants to change humanity, which our protagonists have something against. It's also nice to get a look at the different locations the game has to offer. There are forests, fortresses, caves, laboratories, ruins, cities, and even a volcano. And the graphics don't look bad either, even though the character design reminds me of Clash of Clans. In most scenes with Knack, he's fighting enemies of varying sizes, which almost confirms my suspicion that the size-shifting concept of Knack's character design is the core idea behind the gameplay. Also, fighting seems to be a very important aspect of the gameplay. This could possibly be what Cerny meant with a little bit of God of War. Interestingly, in one scene, Knack turns into a small glass version of himself in order to traverse through a corridor full of lasers. This means that Knack can change his abilities based on his surroundings and transform into special versions of himself. I don't know about you, but this trailer got me excited to see more of this game. And now, time for a sponsor.
Greetings and God bless my child. It is I, the Holy Spirit, cometh to warn thee of the profanity that will be awaiting you in the rest of this rather unholy video. If you feel inclined, you could already, I don't know, maybe leave a like. The Lord would be pleased by this grateful gesture, and by subscribing you could even motivate the lunatic behind this creation to produce more of this verbal chaos in the future. In the meantime, stay blessed, my child, and remember to share the holy message with all your fellow humans. Now, let us be witness of the devil spawn that is this Knacktastic video to come. Farewell, and Godspeed.
November 2013. Knack releases along with the PS4. Unfortunately, I'm not able to get a copy in time, and my location makes it, well, let's just say, a bit more difficult. So in the meantime, how about we go online and see what the press and my favorite YouTubers think of this game.
The little version of Knack is totally adorable in spite of his always serious Ron Perlman voice.
That's better.
And the big 50-foot-tall version is absolutely intimidating.
The titular main character is an upturned bucket on a body made up of large numbers of small objects, and he gets bigger the more of them he collects. Sounds a wee bit Katamari Damacy so far, doesn't it? Wonders why they even gave him a voice. One further wonders why the voice they went for sounds like Barry White trying to chat up a jar of Nutella.
Impressive. And his voice is really bad, and his dialogue is worse. He'll beat up somebody, and he'll be like, what, not strong enough for you? Like, it's so... He has just an attitude, and it's not interesting to listen to. He just is an unlikable character.
He's such a garbage mascot. You look at Mario and Sonic, their design is so simple and iconic that even if a 4-year-old drew them, you would know who they are. Knack, on the other hand, is 2,000 little rocks that sort of shape into some fucking weirdo troll. Good luck drawing that shit, kid.
You want it to be, and it has no heart. The character of Knack is supremely uninteresting.
As we used to say in the Yorkshire ghetto, Knack is cack.
Unfortunately, whether you're big or small is more dependent on what the level designer wants than on your own choices and actions. While small variations in size are generally tolerated, nearly every level dictates just how big or small you're going to be.
So Knack can only grow from collecting specific objects. His size is largely dictated inorganically by progress through the levels. The level design is as bland as it gets. Corridor after corridor after empty room after empty room. You can design every single fucking level with one very long piece of string threaded through some ping pong ball.
When you're given control, Knack mindlessly punches his way through corridor after corridor of dull enemies.
The gameplay consists of walking into an empty area, hitting a guy once, and then walking into another empty area and doing it again and again until the game is over.
But the succession of fighting areas are small, and it's just lather, rinse, repeat as you move from enemy to enemy throughout the game.
And brawling is exactly what Knack does. You're ushered down confined paths, desperate to explore the serene but unreachable countryside, as you fend off waves of robots, goblins, and too many humans to count. And don't expect that formula to waver. You may momentarily flee from a boulder or scale a mountainous wall, but those short forays are smothered by the preponderance of fights you must endure.
What does Knack have? 12 different varieties of rock texture. You spend more time in caves than a hibernating bear. Yes, you grow bigger and hit harder as the level goes on, but the rooms grow larger at the same rate, and enemies are swapped out for tougher ones, so the gameplay doesn't change.
No is right. Nothing changes, even when you're bigger. You still just punch and perform the weakest double jump known to games. Now you're just fighting bigger enemies. There are 13 chapters in Knack, and every one of them plays out in the same tired manner. You start out small, gradually build your size until you're huge, and then arbitrarily shrink back down when the chapter wraps up. And then you start the whole thing over again.
This disappointment also applies to some of the alternate materials Knack can absorb. It's great to build Knack out of mirrors or ice or flaming logs, but those elements are only ever available in specific situations where they're really the only answer to the problem in front of you. There's no process of discovery by trial and error here, just moving forward.
Sometimes you absorb different elements, such as ice and wood, but there's still no change. Sure, a flaming arrow may melt your icy heart, but there's no mechanical difference. During some levels, you have a crystalline body, which initializes Stealth Knack.
Stealth Knack!
Time for some real variety, right? Not quite. With a tap of a button, you can avoid red lasers, but enemies can still see you, even if you're invisible, which makes it all the more laughable when the doctor says, no more sneaking around, after an enemy shoots at you, as if sneaking was ever an option.
In gameplay, Knack can take hits like a matchstick model of a polio victim. I ask myself, I'm dying an awful lot. Is this game badly made, or am I just this shit? Perhaps a silly question. Every enemy can slice off your health bar like a fat bridesmaid left alone with a wedding cake. There's an awkward pause after the dodge move that leaves you wide open, and all the action is taking place in a tiny section of the screen surrounded by huge expanses of empty floor. So it is badly made, and I'm not shit. Hooray!
It's much more old school than you'd expect. It's almost like you go back to old like PS1 generation platformers where if you hit an enemy, they die. If you get hit, you die. And you even late in the game when you're a giant monster, you can't take more than 4 or 5 hits before you die, and then you have to reload at a checkpoint. Sometimes the checkpoints are a little far away.
Outside of a few special moves, there's really only one attack button, but it's varied based on how big you are, who you're fighting, and how close you are.
However, Knack's meager repertoire ensures you're doing the same actions ad nauseum. In the tutorial, you learn how to punch, jump attack, and perform 3 separate special moves. And at no point during the course of this adventure, do you learn how to do anything else.
Yeah, it ends up just being really weird. It feels very old school and not in a necessarily good way.
There's even a part in the new one where they make fun of Knack for only having 2 moves.
It's hard to believe you saved the world. All you know are 3 punches and a kick.
He can jump, too.
I asked myself a short ways in, why do the words Crash Bandicoot keep crossing my mind? Because that's what it plays like. This is as far as we've come, people. Right back around to PS1 era gameplay, moving along a line and hitting things. Except Crash Bandicoot had colour and life and secrets and challenges and character and humour and squealing pigs you could ride on after looking at the camera with a slightly suspect look on your face.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like, almost like a Crash Bandicoot.
It does. It has that feeling of an older game, and it doesn't work perfectly.
The game is a fucking disaster. It's a 3D platformer with de-emphasized jumping.
So Crash Bandicoot, for example, we'd lay out levels and there'd be 50 jumps in a row you had to make or you couldn't get through the level, and that's clearly not something that anybody can do. So.
In the meantime, here's an extended look at the gameplay.
Even even this guy, whose sole job it is to promote the game and make it sound good, is lost for words when asked to describe what's special about Knack.
Certainly, I think it's, when some people say that, is it necessarily, so you'll see, and also, I mean, and I've seen people on the demo, some people use it.
The flow of play is constantly interrupted by loads of short transitional cutscenes where Knack jumps off a ledge or climbs over a low wall, which is all stuff we're usually doing anyway, so it's jarring to have control wrested away just to show you something you've done a dozen times already. Worse are the cutscenes that show Knack doing something spectacularly cool, like destroying a munitions plant. It feels like they're cheating us out of the payoff for playing an entire level.
It's especially weird how he keeps ordering Knack to be destroyed when Knack is obviously indestructible, in cutscenes anyway.
He happily uppercuts a defeated enemy into a steaming lake of molten lava and flings an aircraft by its tail into the unforgiving ground. And don't believe for a second that he sheds a single tear for the pilot engulfed in the flaming wreckage. The only thing Knack desires more than brutal destruction is finding creative ways to exterminate his many foes. At least that's how the cutscenes play out.
It does it really well in some ways. One of the ways that's probably the most seamless is like there are a lot of cutscenes interwoven through the game, but they're super instant. You're just going in and out of them really fast, and they look really good.
So we have platforming, but we've de-emphasized jumps within that context.
Do you know what that means? That means when Knack walks over to a gap, it turns into a cutscene of him jumping over. Welcome to the game, Knack.
There is the slightest hit of exploration if you have sharp eyes. Weak walls can be knocked down to find treasures. Well, are they still considered treasure if they aren't valuable? There are tons of collectibles, but these pieces are worthless on their own. If you complete a set, you have a perk that gives you a passive ability. I got my first one on Chapter 9. And though it filled my special meter faster, it didn't provide any sort of interesting twist.
And there's a lot of collectibles. I actually kind of had an issue with collectibles because I looked for them really hard, and you get a bunch of collectibles and you can use them to build a gadget if you find they're randomly which ones you get, and the gadgets can lead to cool things, like you hit slow motion when you hit an enemy or something. But even after looking for all of them, like really looking for them, I only found enough to finish like 2 of the gadgets, and neither of them were that interesting. So I feel like you probably have to replay it a lot to get all those things, but I'm not sure you're going to want to.
The problem is that it just keeps falling apart. You start off fighting the goblins who were kicked out of the cities by the humans, but it's never really established that the humans deserve to be spared from the goblins' revenge. You just beat the crap out of them because that's what the plot demands, regardless of the moral question.
The plot is visited in brief cutscenes between corridor traversals and is the kind of plot that very loudly and busily goes fucking nowhere. It's set in a peaceful human society where technology is powered by ancient relics dug up from archaeological sites, in one of which Knack was discovered, so you might think something will be made of where Knack came from and what his purpose is. But no one cares. He's deployed as a weapon against an invading army of goblins, and when he starts fighting them in a human city, smashing buildings and making residents visibly shit themselves, you might think the plot will now be about Knack questioning his allegiance to a species that hates and fears him, and in which he can never truly belong. But no, everyone's just sort of cool with it. Those buildings are probably going to fall down anyway, and the people inside were mostly dicks. It's like Knack spends the whole game showing off and breaking things in the vain hope that the plot will actually be about him at last.
And every other character is just a walking exposition machine where they just will walk over and be like, goblins, man, they're still pissed about the Crystal Wars. And it's like, you don't end up caring about them. They're a dumb plot twist.
The whole story sort of reminds me of the relics that make up Knack himself. Some basic, recognizable forms that really don't serve any function beyond giving Knack a general sort of shape.
Well, that was not good. But this is not possible. No, certainly Sony wouldn't have screwed up this release as well, right? Knack can definitely not be as bad as they say. And I am determined. Now I have to try it out myself. Hell, I'll even go one step further. I'm gonna platinum Knack. I will achieve everything the developers want me to achieve. And by doing so, I will give the game the fair judgment it deserves. So without further ado, it's time to boot up this bad boy. For in Knack, I trust. I want to be brutally honest with you. I have finished Knack. I have gotten every single achievement the game has, and I'm at a loss for words. I want to go through the entire game with you now. Give you a brief summary of the story and describe the gameplay a little bit. Afterwards, I'll go over the achievements that I missed or had to do something special for. Are you ready?
Here we go!
How bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad?
The game starts off with establishing the main conflict, that being between the goblins and the humans. At the doctor's laboratory, this unnamed important lady holds a meeting with Dr. Vargas, the explorer Ryder, Victor, Katrina, and Lucas, who is Ryder's nephew and the doctor's assistant. The main question that bothers our main cast is where the goblins have obtained their new powerful technology from. Victor and Katrina use the moment to flex with their impressive robots. Before the meeting concludes, the Doctor wants to showcase his newest creation, that being us, the protagonist of the game, Knack. In the tutorial, we are being taught the fundamentals of this unique peak gaming experience. Knack can walk, punch, jump, grow, more on that in a bit, and dash. There's also the very strong Sunstone moves, of which there are 3 of. There's a Sun Blast, a Sun Tornado, and a Sun Shockwave. Now do me a favor and immediately forget the first 2, because they are far worse than the Sun Shockwave, so there's no reason to use these 2 when you can just annihilate the entire screen with the push of 2 buttons. In order to use the clear the screen move, you have to fill the circular progress bar right here. Every charge amounts to 1 usage, so you have a maximum of 3 capable charges. Alright, so the balancing is already kinda off, but there's more. Remember the growing part of Knack? It turns out that his health and size correlates, so they're practically the same thing, which makes sense. What doesn't make sense, however, is the size to damage ratio. The tutorial is so kind that it provides an exemplary variation of every enemy in the game. There's melee, ranged, and slightly bigger than you are currently enemies. And I am not kidding, those are all the enemies you'll face in the game. The melee enemies are usually pushovers, who you can easily overpower with the button mashing of your attack button. The noticeably larger than you are at the moment enemies are basically the same, except that they can tank more hits and barely react to the impact of Knack's fists. And then there's the ranged. These on their own are rather harmless, but in a few areas where there are multiple at once, they become a hellish nightmare. I want to showcase this part in chapter 8.1, where there's 3 bow goblins simultaneously waiting for your torturous demise. Now you might be thinking that I'm overreacting. But no, on the very hard difficulty, 1 hit is enough for our made out of particles hero to kick the bucket. Good luck getting to that first platform without being hit once. Then using your small time window to eradicate that pesky goblin while paying attention to those ugly twins of chaos, and then make your way up to the second step in order to give them a well-deserved nosebleed. You might be fooled into thinking by the gameplay you have already seen that this task is certainly doable. But be not fooled, for you have not seen the worst yet. Let's go over the moves, shall we? The small version of Knack, while being totally adorable, is tediously slow. On the other hand, Knack's bigger version is also very slow. It's not fun to move as Knack. You want to be faster while playing the game. From now on, I will speed up the gameplay and later change it back, and you tell me which version of the game seems more enjoyable. About the jump mechanic. Knack is a double jump, which I had totally forgotten despite me having done research on this game and the gameplay for many weeks onwards and playing through the entire game for 3 weeks. The problem is that the jump only does its bare minimum by allowing Knack to climb upstairs. The double jump does not help Knack to gain either distance or height, making it useless. The jump's only real purpose is seen in combat, which is 90% of the gameplay anyway, because it enables Knack to do a never before in a Blue Hedgehog's game seen airspin dash thing. This is the most reliable move against ranged enemies, as it can dodge their projectiles while also doing damage. The normal punch is borderline useless as well. It takes too long and can easily miss the target. Yes, I'm not kidding. The punch, the most bare bones move you could have in a combat themed game, is not fun to use and feels weak. Those semi-cinematic slow motion zoom-ins don't change that fact, despite the game constantly trying to make it look cool. To wrap this up, the dash does its thing. However, after sliding approximately 30 centimeters, this much, on my new favorite unit, 6.2 ancient relics from the PS4 launch title Knack, he abruptly stops and leaves himself open for roughly 1 second. Only then can you proceed in your hilarious family couch co-op fun that is this next piece. Where were we? Ah yes, the whole size shifting Katamari Damacy stuff, right. Knack has these different phases from which he can vary. There's the small version, the size of an average human male version, this big version, and one that's even larger than that. But we don't care about that one. All you have to be aware of is that they all play identically, and I mean that. There's no difference in the gameplay. Here are some gameplay sections as each phase of Knack, and you can look for yourself if they look any different from one another. No? Thought so too. The biggest disappointment is that this size shift doesn't happen dynamically. Every time there's a change in Knack's appearance, there's a cutscene that shows this change. The cutscenes in this game are an absolute disgrace, and I'm not talking about those that we saw in the beginning. Every level uses these transitional cutscenes in order to load a new segment of a level. Think Half-Life, but instead of a brief, there's Knack jumping off a cliff. Every level features at least 3 of these, and they interrupt the already staggering game flow tremendously. So yeah, the gameplay isn't fun, and Knack doesn't control well. However, in my stupendous quest to finish this game by obtaining the Platinum Trophy, I have already made progress. By landing 100 hits with the dash attack, which I haven't mentioned yet, one receives his first out of 42 trophies. If we ignore the normal punch, which I wholeheartedly recommend, then the only reliable attacks Knack has are his already covered Sonic Spin and his dash attack, which you can perform by dashing and then punching. This move is only useful because it cancels out the weaknesses of both the slow punch and the abrupt stopping after the dash. You got all of that? Good. I hope so. Because that's everything Knack has to offer. That's right. If you understood Knack's very limited movement and the vast enemy variation that I tackled previously, then you know what the entire game feels like. There is little to no deviation from that.
What comes naturally? How bad can I be? How bad can I possibly be? Well, there's a principle.
Now in the tutorial stage of the game, we learn a bit more of the world surrounding us and of Knack's origin. Apparently, there's these ancient relics which function as a power source in this society and were found long ago by Dr. Vargas, within some ancient ruins. Knack is also made out of these relics, which you probably have already guessed, and was found and created by Dr. Vargas as well. Victor is not pleased by Knack's presence and challenges him to a fist duel against his robots. Also, the battle doesn't take place in the laboratory, but rather the much more pleasant to look at garden. Here we are being introduced to the next fallacy of this Magnum Opus. Take a look at this wall. See anything suspicious? If not, you should maybe go to sleep because you're obviously not awake. Or blind, in which case I'm sorry. Anyway, you might be wondering what's behind this awfully ominous surface. It's a staircase that leads to a gorgeous treasure chest. And what is inside said chest? A piece for a gadget. Okay, I've got some explaining to do. So, every level, with only a few exceptions, has these secrets. They are all built the same, meaning there's an obvious and easy to spot wall that can be destroyed. Behind said wall is always a staircase that leads down to a treasure chest, roughly the size of Knack. The game has a total of 68 of these secrets, and finding them all in one playthrough awards you with the next trophy. Unfortunately, I didn't find every chest in my first playthrough, so yeah, I had to play through the game a second time, but more on that in a bit. In the gameplay I have already shown you, you might have noticed different hub elements that weren't there in the beginning. Like for example this combo meter here at the bottom. That's because you have to unlock it first. The combo meter is a gadget that needs to be built by collecting all of the necessary pieces found in the treasure chests. It is one of a few gameplay advancements that you can unlock this way. In total, there are 8 different gadgets that help Knack on his journey. I really don't want to waste a lot of time on these things, so I'll go over all of them in brief succession. The combo meter is made out of 7 pieces and tracks Knack's consecutive amount of hits he landed without getting hit himself. There's also the advantage that the longer the combo goes on for, the more damage Knack does, which might sound good on paper but makes the achievement much harder, as now Knack has to face a dozen enemies more than if he could just land 3 to 4 hits on one instead of only 1 or 2. Getting a 20 combo is quite doable, while a 50 combo is tougher, but also manageable in the correct chapters. You need 3 gadget pieces for the relic detector and 7 for the secret detector, and they do exactly what you think they do. Whenever Knack is close to some relics, or a very hidden and not findable secret, there's a little icon on the left to indicate the presence of them. This funky wannabe Tetris block is the transmuter, and is made out of 6 parts. With it equipped, Knack gains a slight bit of health if he breaks a sunstone. This is rather useless, especially on higher difficulties, because the gained health is so abysmally small that it barely makes a difference. The next 3 gadgets are all sunstone related. The sunstone battery adds an additional circle right here, so Knack can now save up to 4 super moves. It also shouldn't be confused for the double battery, which makes Knack's sun moves all the more powerful. Now I don't want to come off as mean and whatnot, but I don't see any reason for making your charges take twice as long in order to upgrade an already overpowered move. Yeah, don't use that one. The Harvester is certainly more efficient, as it gives you the slightest bit of sun energy for every enemy you defeat. And I don't know if you have already noticed, but Knack has a ton of enemies. That's an additional 12 pieces. At last, there's the time dilator. I cannot tell you anything about it, because in order to use it you have to unequip the combo meter, which is way more useful if we ignore the achievement part. From the looks of it, it seems like the time dilator gives you a slow motion ability, and trust me, if there's anything you don't want to Knack, it's for the gameplay to become even more painstakingly slow than it already is. And with these 5 additional parts, there's 40 gadget pieces in total. But wait, there's 68 chests. So what's in the last 28? Well, next to the 40 gadget pieces, there are also 6 different relics you can find, like for example this bacteria here. You need 15 rubies, 20 sunstones, another 20 amethysts, 15 emeralds, 20 Aqua Relics and 10 Diamonds in order to unlock each Knack variation. Now if you count it with me, that makes an additional 90 relics you need to collect, which is far more than 28. So if you want to unlock everything the game has to offer, you need to play through the game at least twice. But it gets better. You see, what you get out of a treasure chest is completely randomized. There's no guarantee that you're gonna get a relic or a gadget piece out of your first chest, or any other for that matter. Luckily, once you receive the gadget piece, it remains in your inventory, and if the gadget is built, you can use it anytime, anywhere in your save file. The crystal relics, however, have no maximum number. That means, once you have unlocked, for example, Vampire Knack by obtaining 15 ruby relics, you can still find rubies in future chests. What the hell? In my case, I played through the game twice and was still missing 6 diamonds, because obviously the diamonds are the rarest relic. What did I have to do now? Play through the game again, of course, and hope that I get those silly diamond relics in the meanwhile. And I did play through the game 2 additional times. Do you know how many diamonds I had by the end of my 4th playthrough? 7. So another playthrough it is, right? No! This steaming pile of garbage was too much for me, so I looked online for help. And guess what? There's actually a reliable strat that helped. Turns out the game reloads the containment of the chests every time the game boots up. So what was my new job? That's right, start a level with many treasure chests, play through the level till the last secret, check if there's a diamond in there, if not, immediately close the game, turn it back on and repeat. Interestingly, this method worked out quite well, and I've gotten my last diamond after about an hour. Sony, what was your development team thinking when they designed this atrocity? Anyway, here are some achievements. I will not go over the special variations of Knack to save our time. There's a brief description in the background, and you can pause if you want to know more about the versions. Just be aware of the fact that not a single variation is even interesting in the slightest way gameplay-wise. So to sum it up, all the unlockables in the game are bland and uninspired. You don't want to unlock them, and the only useful version, that being Diamond Knack, is tedious to obtain. They serve zero purpose and should
Just saying, how bad can I be? I'm just doing what comes naturally. How bad can I be? I'm just following my destiny.
In the garden, Knack beats the everlasting crap out of Victor's robots. During the midst of the battle, the statue of Charlotte falls victim to that goddamned ranged attack. The Doctor is visibly hurt by the destruction of the statue. He also has a picture of her in his airplane. So Charlotte has passed away and was the wife of the Doctor. Then the group makes their way to the Highland Crags, where they follow the goblins by foot. The group splits up, leaving Knack and the Doctor on their own. After successfully avoiding the dangerous traps and defeating the first goblins and hostile local wildlife, they enter a mine. The Doctor explains where the ancient relics are usually found. It's inside these ancient ruins, though their origin and purpose is unknown. Afterwards, our heroes witness the destruction of a poorly built bridge and fight their way through bigger goblins. By discovering another ancient ruin, Dr. Vargas is reminded of the one where he found Knack. He briefly explains the Knack's bizarre origins, but it turns out there's really nothing of interest here. We are then surprisingly greeted by Victor's friendly robots, who Knack beats up in quick succession. And then, by having traversed through more of the mine, Victor spots the goblin village in the distance, and we make our way there also by foot. It's at this point where I want to point out another incredible strength of the game. You want to know what it is? Take a listen. The music of the game perfectly describes the dull, bland and just boring aspect of Knack. Not a single track in the OST stands out or is worth mentioning. They all repeat way too quickly, and there's no impressive or memorable melody. There's no leitmotif, no clever remixes. I mean, they reuse certain tracks multiple times and it's just awful. The entire soundtrack plays it safe, just like the story, and it doesn't work out. I mean, this is the launch title of the PS4. They wanted to impress the audience, but the only thing I want to do now is press my eyeballs out. How can you fuck up a game so much that it becomes stale before you even have finished 1/8 of it? But we got to keep going. The game isn't done yet. Our protagonists have found the goblins' hideout and walked right in a trap. Except Lucas and, you guessed it, Knack. They of course try to help the others by finding another way around it, by foot. Sounds familiar? It sure does to me. And it even sounds and looks familiar too. The developers must have thought so too, because in the second half of the level they actually unpack some creative ideas. Suddenly there's unique traps and the design shifted away from the previous forest area. Then they go one step further in the next level. Lucas feels bold and dares Knack to fusion with some ice crystals. After a small dialogue, Knack actually succeeds and becomes Ice Knack. And what is so different as Ice Knack? That's right, it's nothing. You're just bigger. No new moves, no interesting puzzles, just bigger. And you have an additional health bar as well, and a new weakness against the sun. That's right, now you can melt. Hooray! But in all honesty, every version, wait, we already covered the version, so what is this called? Let's call it specials, even though it doesn't feel like it in the slightest. So every special feels identical to one another and isn't used in a fun or creative way. Sensing a pattern here? Instead, they often feel like a cheap version of the game trying to come off as intriguing, but failing miserably at it. Anyway, we are now inside the Goblin Forest, and after the game tries to make you understand that Victor is clearly a villain, Knack is attacked by the local Goblin King, who he, of course, easily beats the living hell out of. Then, Knack loots the Goblin's loot chamber and becomes huge for the first time. This, of course, doesn't change anything in the gameplay, as I have already stated, but it does change the current story a bit. Now we are the ones chasing the Goblin King inside his own base. Of course, Knack first up saves his best friends and Victor, who for some reason is suddenly with them again, as they are being cornered by the Goblin's powerful tanks. Knack does his thing and they all continue their journey to the top of the village. The moment our heroes got the king cornered in order to find out where he has gotten the technology from, he steps into his DIY mech and the first boss fight of the game commences. I'm gonna be honest, I can't do this anymore. This game has got to be the most boring and repetitive I have ever seen. So I'm going to save my energy by not ranting about the boss fights, but I will not leave these monstrous crimes against gaming unharmed. So I brought in some help who can tackle this in his own way.
Hello you perverts. Because your dear pet show is a weak beta male, I go to the boss battles. And they are bad. They are all mechs, with the first one being the most interesting because of its more tribal look and follow the same formula. Dodge the attacks, get to them, beat their ass. The first boss is a great start. It's a corridor with a metal punching bag at the end. The formula as mentioned before. Then you reach the second phase where he stands on the castle walls and throws bombs at you. And can't be attacked? Finally, we gotta do something different. What would it be? I love myself a good puzzle. Lock message! Press button! Moving! Make pixels move! Get 'em! Yes! Oh god, Knack! This game is ready to work! What the fuck? Time! 2! The second boss exists. So I must die! The third boss is the most interesting one to talk about. It's a female robot. Look, Knack, if you knew what the lady's like, we wouldn't have this problem. Anyway, she first shoots you with a purple cube that slowly drains your health. So you think, oh, I gotta speedrun this fight, right? Well, no, there are health crates everywhere and the fight is the same formula again. What the fuck? But we have a few platforming segments between the combat. That are brain dead easy. Then Knack beats the boss and the black woman dies. For real this time. Okay, Knack is officially based. And the last boss is personal for him. All I can say is that he looks like William Afton.
I always come back.
So see ya.
How bad can I be? I'm just building the economy. How bad can I be? Just look at me petting this puppy.
At this point, the entire story becomes a complete clusterfuck and continues to get worse the longer it goes on for. Having defeated the Goblin King, Ryder and the Doctor question him about the origins of the powerful technology. The Goblin King reveals that he has gotten them from Gandahar, the Goblin leader, but he doesn't tell them his location. Ryder proposes to wait for a while until the Goblin King will reveal more. At the same time, Victor randomly decides to kidnap Lucas. For real, there was no build-up that could have hinted at that. It just happens, because... plot, I guess. And congratulations. You made it to the most boring part of the video, where I will try to briefly summarize the entire rest of the story in all its glory. If you want to immediately go back to the good part with all the rage and ranting, then feel free to skip to the timestamp on screen right now. You're still here? Okay then. Dr. Vargas and Knack accept Victor's friendly invite and follow him to his palace. There, they immediately forget about the kidnapping of Lucas and let Victor explain his newest discovery, a giant relic. Knack, just causing havoc for no reason, causes our heroes to flee the scene. Arriving in the castle's garden, we get to witness the incredible sight of Stealth Knack for the first time. And if you manage to kill 20 enemies while being invisible, even though that does nothing except turning you weaker, you get an achievement for your hard effort. After destroying about 200 of Victor's robots, Knack and the others are able to hijack a plane and go to some mine. Yes, they just go to a random cave, because they could maybe find a secret door with a very familiar looking key. Could you actually believe it? The door is actually inside said mine. But plot twist, Knack is not actually the key. So Victor, who just coincidentally appears, orders his robots to kill Knack. The end. Did you really think it would be over this quickly? No, of course not. Because Knack can only die in gameplay, not during cutscenes. He just falls down a cliff and survives. But what is this? Knack accidentally discovers the legendary land. It's golden, shiny, and is made out of these ancient relics. Also, we are being accompanied by this giant golden orb that tries to consume Knack whenever it sees him. It's a close call, but Knack leaves the shiny city within a hill in one piece. More like a dozen pieces, right? He's then thrown out in the backyard construction site of Victor's other castle. And guess what? We have to save the dog and child again. Long story short, Knack becomes wooden, burns, becomes wood again, destroys a few robot riders like, oh crikey, that Katrina makes my didgeridoo, and they all leave the scene. While the crew hangs out in the city, it is coincidentally being raided by Gandahar, you know, the other goblin guy from the trailer, and Knack saves the day again. Hooray! Don't forget to throw the cars against the airplanes in the level for the achievement. While we're at it, how about we follow the goblins again and destroy their entire base? That's the next two chapters summarized in one sentence. But beware, for Charlotte isn't actually dead, but was working for the goblins all this time. Shocking, I know. Dr. Vargas is more destroyed than the statue of Charlotte from the beginning, and now we are looking for the other key for the mysterious gate. Then we find it. It leads to a temple at some volcano. There we have an epic boss fight against Katrina. She dies, Knack and co hijack Victor's airplane, he dies, and then the giant floating orb reaches the surface and Knack tries to destroy it as well, but fails miserably at it. At least that's what happened to me. You see, the final boss of Knack is easily one of the worst, most broken, offensively bad boss fights I have ever fought in a video game. It's horrible, horrific, and downright unexplainable to me how this segment could have made it into the final cut of the game. Tell me, how does this sound like? First up, let's shrink you down to a significantly smaller size than your opponent. Your first act is to move towards the monstrous opposing force without getting hurt by its bluish particles. Then you grow large again, but you can get hurt while growing, so be careful. Then avoid some of the most easy yet annoying attack patterns in the game, and I dare you to land a single hit without getting hurt. Are you done? Okay, let's do the same thing again. Repeat it over a second time and you win. Congratulations. Now this might have not seemed so bad, and I admit that, but there's one crucial element that makes this fight and also the complete game completely insufferable. Don't play the game on a high difficulty. Don't do it. I have mentioned it before countless times throughout the video. The game becomes borderline unplayable on higher difficulties. You know, the sort of difficulty that you need in order to get a few achievements? Yay! Truly fantastic. Thank you so much, Sony. I hope you fix that stuff in the sequel. Who am I kidding? They'd never release a sequel for a game that was reviewed this poorly. Oh, motherfucker. Hey, thanks for watching. If you stuck around until now, I have to tell you that you're morally obligated to subscribe. Or at least like the video. This video has been on my bucket list for well over a year now, and it's great to finally be done. I want to take this moment to congratulate Knack and the PS4 for turning 10 years old. It's really impressive, but please, never return. I want to thank all the content creators that I definitely took the gameplay and whatnot from with their permission. Yes, nothing weird going on here. Especially the Escapist, who has just quit their channel. Will be very interesting to watch that shit show unfold. So yeah, till then. My last question would be towards you, my dear friend. Can you tell me a single game that's better than Knack?
Well, I don't know. Maybe Halo 2, Doom Eternal, Spyro the Dragon, Enter the Gungeon, Duke Nukem 3D, Risk of Rain 2, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Spyro 2 Gateway to Glimmer, The Binding of Isaac, Repentance, ARMS, Kirby, Planet Rubberball, Rayman Legends, System Shock, the remake, Deep Rock Galactic, Vampire Survivor, Five Nights at Freddy's, River City Girls, Pizza Tower, Half-Life, Overwatch, Plants vs. Zombies, Slime Rancher, Celeste, Blood, Batman Arkham Knight, Hollow Knight, Hades, God of War, Crash Team Racing, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, Monster Hunter World, Psychonauts, Shovel Knight, Prey, Bugsnax, Dead Cells Ahead in Time, Inscription, Cuphead, Castle Crashers, Quake, Outer Wild, Dishonored, Luigi's World, Paper Mario and the Origami King, Metroid Samus Returns, Pikmin 4, Yokai Watch 2, Pokemon Alpha Sapphire, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Guacamelee, What the Golf, Baba's You, Fight Night, Call of the Lamb.